You're listening to the Business and BBQ podcast, hosted by Tim Harridge. Tim Harridge is an active entrepreneur who built and sold 6 companies by the age of 40 and enjoys sharing the ups and downs of business and entrepreneur life. As for the barbecue, that's just something he has a passion for and likes to share as well. Here's your host, Tim Harridge.
All right. What's cooking, everybody? Welcome back to the Business and BBQ podcast. I'm Tim Harridge, and I'm so glad you've joined me today. Today, I'm talking to my good friend, Kevin Ortner. Kevin is the CEO of Renters Warehouse, the nation's largest property management company. Kevin is a real estate investor who's been investing in real estate for over 18 years. He bought his first rental property at the age of 18, and he now leads a company that manages over 22,000 houses and is developing technology and solutions to help you grow your rental investment business or to help you find a property in a different city before you move there. We're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about being the dumbest person in the room. We'll talk about some entrepreneurship fundamentals. We'll discuss some of the myths to owning single-family rentals. We'll discuss national trends. We'll talk about his book, The Rent Estate Revolution. We'll talk about their focus on rent estate and his new podcast, The Rent Estate Podcast. Stick around. I can't wait to introduce you to Kevin. Start collecting more leads in minutes. Not only do I use HubSpot's free CRM, but I also use their free marketing tools. Start turning visitors into leads today. Sign up for free at HubSpot.com/TH. With HubSpot Marketing Free, you'll have everything you need to convert more visitors into leads. Sign up for free today, and it's free forever. No contract or credit card required. It's a risk-free way to see what inbound marketing can do for you. Start turning visitors into leads today. Sign up for free at HubSpot.com/TH. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Business and BBQ podcast. Tim Harridge here with my good buddy, Kevin Ortner, CEO. Kevin, say hello to everyone.
How's it going? Tim, thanks for having me on. It's going to be great.
I'm glad to have you on, man. Some of the audience obviously knows who you are. Some of them don't. So why don't you just take a couple minutes to talk about yourself, what you do, where you work, your family life, your investment, anything about you.
Sure. That sounds good. So I'm Kevin Ortner, CEO of Renters Warehouse. Renters Warehouse is America's leading real estate investment services company. What that really means is for a little over 12 years, we've been building a really large property management platform across the United States. Today, we manage about 22,000 properties for about 14,000 investors in 43 markets across the U.S. And recently this year added the ability to buy and sell tenanted single-family homes through our website, through our investor marketplace. So now you can research new markets, new cities, new assets, purchase a property online through our investor marketplace with our trained advisors across the country. Bring that into our management system. We'll take care of that leasing and property management for you. And if you want to add on to the portfolio, we can obviously help you grow. And also some people are looking to maybe dispose of some assets, do 1031s, whatever they're going to do with that. We can help with facilitate those as well. So really the full service life cycle of rental real estate is what we do here at Renters Warehouse. And it's been a pretty exciting journey to build that over the past little over a decade, I guess. And personal front, I've been personally investing in real estate for 18 years, which is literally half of my life. I bought my first duplex as a freshman in college, and that's what really got me started and passionate about it. Outside of work, being an entrepreneur, investing in real estate, I've got a wife and 2 daughters. One's going to be a senior this year in high school, so we're looking at colleges and getting her ready to be shipped off here in a year or so. And then I have a daughter in 4th grade as well coming in. So hang out with them when I can, and softball and swimming and sports and the like. And so we're busy, but every day is exciting.
So 18 years ago, how old were you?
I was 18.
You were 18 and you bought a duplex. Why?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and that's where I live today, and that's where I work today. And decided I need to get the heck out of the snow and the winters, and so I moved to Arizona to go to Arizona State University. That's where I attended college. And when I think it was really instilled from my father, who was a police officer by trade, but did some home building on the side, had a mini storage on the side, so he had some entrepreneurial roots as well, and always talked about owning things, not renting things, and thought buying a place to live would be great, rent out part of it to some friends that I had down there, and turned out that I could live for free. Had the mortgage paid, was living for free, made a little extra cash flow every month, some extra beer money, and I thought, geez, this is fantastic. That was really my first intro to real estate investing, and I got the bug. And so it was really kind of by chance, but it worked out great.
So do you think, how common is that story? Like with your average customer, you guys manage 22,000 houses. How many customers is that?
Yeah, it's like 14,000 investors.
So most investors think that they think they only have 1 or 2 houses, and that makes them, insignificant, right? But look at the numbers, right? If you got 14,000 people with 22,000 houses, I would imagine a whole lot more have 1 than have 3.
For sure. Our average client has something like 1.2 houses, right? And so most of them have 1. That's really how we grew the businesses on the backs of of mom and pop entrepreneurial landlords who have one or two homes. And you're right. A lot of people think they're really insignificant having one or two homes. And really that puts them in a very elite group of Americans who are investing in real estate. There's a whole lot of them, but it's not that big of a group at the end of the day. And if you look at the data that's out there, what's interesting, one of the single family rental charts includes units up to 4 unit buildings, right? So up to 4 plexes. The government for financing purposes, considers that a single family. So there's like 22.5 million single family rental units for rent across the country. And 88% of those units are owned by people who own 5 or less. So the majority of this asset class is owned by people who own 1 to 5 doors. And what it really means is you're special when you own 1 to 5. But it's interesting. I talked to someone the other day who owns, what did he tell me? I think he said, I just own 11 or something like it. It was like 10, 11, 12, whatever it was. I just, I'm not a big guy, just an 11. I'm like, you realize that puts you in the top like 5% of real estate investors in the country at just 11, right? It is very interesting that this is it's a small group of people across the country. And if you own 1 or 2, you're very influential in the entire market of single family rentals for sure.
A couple of weeks ago, I drove my kids by a house that I grew up in that my parents bought in the, I think, mid 80s for like $18,000. And today it's worth about $180,000. And what I was trying to teach my kids is, the way I look at real estate investing, it's like an inflation indexed annuity with an underlying asset base that appreciates. And I told them, I said, look, one day you're going to be telling your friends that I bought a house for $100,000 and now it's worth $1 million. I'm just telling you. I mean, you'll be driving your kids around. You'll be like, oh, this house, could you believe you used to be able to buy it for $500,000 and now it's $850,000? And even in my 20 years of doing this, there's neighborhoods that I drive around in right now that it's like, oh God, I used to buy houses for $40,000 over there. And, so it's funny. I tell people all the time, it's for as little as $20,000. And there's markets in the U.S. that you can buy, out of pocket, right? Because you do need to finance some of it, which is the power of real estate. Sure. But for as little as $20,000, you can buy a rent house. Even if you bought an as-is house or a house that was move-in ready for $100,000 off MLS in Jacksonville, right? I mean, you can buy a rent house and only be in it for $20,000. And I just tell people all the time, it's like, you got to start somewhere. And I'd really like to know more about like your average customer. And are they people that are living a good life? Are they working a full-time job? Are they traveling the world so they don't have time to manage their properties? Kind of what do you see these entrepreneurial type people? What's some common things you see in them?
Yeah, it's interesting. When we first started Renters Warehouse, it was right around the big real estate downturn in the Great Recession, 2009, 10, 11, et cetera. And so a lot of our early clients were what we called accidental landlords or unintentional landlords. And they ended up with a house that for whatever reason, they needed to sell it and they couldn't sell it. They're facing short sale foreclosure. They're going to lose too much money if they did sell it. So we said, hey, don't sell it. Don't foreclose. Don't short sell. Let us teach you how to rent it. Hang on to that and live to fight another day kind of thing. We brought on thousands of clients like that. And what was interesting is we turned a lot of those people who were reluctant landlords or didn't buy it with the intention of keeping it as an investment. We still have them today because they realized the power of real estate over the long term, right? And you were just talking a little bit about it. That we preach a lot about that at Renters Warehouse as well, that this is something not get rich quick, it's get rich slow, but it's almost a certain thing that it's going to happen. And you just got to be methodical about it. And then they started to see the power of the things that having rental real estate can do for you. So we have a lot of those clients today. But of course, now, years later, after the real estate downturn, we have a lot of intentional investors coming in. And again, they have 1 or 2 homes, sometimes 1 to start, and they're ordinary, average Americans, right? They oftentimes, it's a married couple, they both work, they've got kids in sports, they're busy, so they don't have the time to manage the property themselves. Managing property is not rocket science. You've done it or you still do it. I'm not sure if you do any more today, but it's not rocket science. It's time consuming and it can be a pain. And so our clients are people who just don't want to have to deal with the hassle of it. And they want to be able to grow their portfolio from 1 to 5. And for that, they need a partner, a team in place to be able to do that. But they're everyday, ordinary people. They don't own a bunch of real estate and travel the world and spend their time in Europe and France sipping fine wine. They're grinding out, trying to make a successful living and leave a legacy for their kids and do the things that you and I do. So it's really interesting that, to talk about our client base and the fact that everyone can do this. Everyone can get into investing in their first home and ultimately their second home. You just put a little bit of money aside and jump in. And I think what stops people from doing it so often is that it can be confusing or complicated, or at least seem complex if you haven't done it before. And there's a lot of fear around it. I can't be a real estate investor. That's for like Warren Buffett or for people who own office buildings or something like that, right? And really that's what we exist for. for is to help guide people through the process and to let them know that it doesn't have to be hard. It can be easy. And the sooner you get started, the sooner that annuity starts working for you and producing extra income and ultimately a great financial freedom in retirement.
It's funny. You talked about the pain, right? So as most of us full-time investors, which I tell people all the time, there's 35, 40,000 flippers in the nation, and there's 2-3 million landlords, right? So although the flippers are what will dominate your social media feed, it's the actual landlords that are the real significant thing. But too often my friends that are full-time in investing, they're trying to manage their own properties, which in my 20 years has been something I've done twice, and I've quit it twice. And now I can tell you it was a glorious day, the day the last tenant moved out that had any idea who I was. I now go to these houses as an inspector. They don't even know who I am. I'd say I work for the property manager, and then it's just because I don't want the pain. I don't want the nightmares, but also I believe it's like if you own stock in Walmart and they bought a bunch of Tide that they were going to sell for $3 a gallon, and they have to sell it for $2.90 a gallon. They're not calling you. You're an investor, right? They're going to manage that. They're going to take care of it. They're going to get rid of it. They're going to minimize losses and move on. And I think the reason most of us own rental property is to make it an investment. So for me, it's kind of, I'm a big ADD person, Kevin. So I will avoid all the negative. So all I get is the monthly report that says how much money I make. And then I can ask some questions like, why did we have legal fees on that? Or why did we have why was there a work order on that? But I don't know. It's like, I tell my friends all the time, like the best thing I ever did for my rental portfolio was to stop being involved. You know what I mean?
Right. Again, it's not rocket science to manage homes. Once you grow a larger portfolio, it becomes a little more complicated. You got to stay on top of stuff and have a good team built and things like that if you're going to do it yourself. And frankly, of that small group the group of people who own a small portfolio, a lot of them do it themselves because they want to, they're entrepreneurial, they're handy, they can take care of some of the issues and save themselves some money. And I think that's fantastic. But if you're someone who really wants to grow that portfolio and take it past 1 or 2 homes, you got to have the right team in place, I think, or you're going to lose your mind and pull your hair out, which you've experienced. And for some reason, doing it once and quitting wasn't enough for you. So you needed to go back and do it again, right?
It was during the recession when money was, and you had to do whatever you had to do. And it probably was a bad decision, but it's a decision we made.
Right. I just love this asset class so much because you can go about it so many different ways from how you invest in it. I don't do a lot of flipping myself. I'm a long-term kind of hold guy. That's my career. It's what I do all day long. And I just don't have the time to dedicate to flipping homes. I'll do a couple here and there just for fun as a hobby kind of project thing. But absolutely love the power of rental real estate, rent houses can do over the long term for anyone. And the sooner you get started, the better. And so that's what we preach at Renters Warehouse. And we're about giving away education for free. We're not some of those folks out there that are trying to make our money off our education and our ideas and the data we have. We want to make money off people who are making money along the way, buying houses and having us manage them for them, and teach people how to invest responsibly and in the right areas and what to look for and how to do it, and just teach the fundamentals of this because it's not taught anywhere. The fact that this is like the only asset in America that ordinary American can leverage to buy, right? Like I love to tell the story about, walking into your bank and saying, hey, Mr. Banker, I'd like to borrow $100,000 to buy Apple stock. They're going to laugh you out of the bank. Maybe have security come and pull you out because you're crazy. You go back into the same banker same afternoon and say, I want to borrow $100,000 to buy this investment. It happens to be real estate. They're going to give it to you on the spot nearly, right? And the fact that you can leverage an investment and then have someone else, your tenant, paying down your loan on your investment while it's appreciating and getting tax benefits. I mean, it's the most amazing thing around, right?
Funny, you said that every now and then you will flip a house for a project or a hobby, and I think you're absolutely nuts. I hate flipping houses. I hate it with a passion. I can't stand it. I don't like contractors. I mean, look at this. My wife has painted a color on my wall, because she's trying to go change our new color scheme now. So she's not telling me to be telling me this is the color calm. I mean, I hate it. They call for money, at 3:00 in the afternoon on a Friday when they were supposed to do the job on Tuesday. I hate flipping houses. I'm very thankful. I feel very blessed to have the ability and the experience to make that kind of money because it's good money. But Jennifer and I have an 18-month plan to where we will never sell another house again. I mean, we were trying to completely exit the flipping game because, I think we've added four houses to the portfolio this year. And we're kind of different now. We're really looking at Class A properties. And we're looking for, $250,000 houses in Dallas that even if they only rent for $1,800, that's fine. If we got to put 30, 40,000 into it, that's fine. Because we're really looking at it now, trying to manage our balance sheet and our long-term P&L. But also,
sure,
you talked about tax advantages. I used to sell houses when we need money. And the gentleman, I think you knew him, that helped start B2R, that recruited me from London. He told me one time, he said, just don't ever sell another house again, refinance it. And I was like, oh, that's just more debt. And we as Americans, like, I love Dave Ramsey, don't get me wrong. We're taught, oh, let's go get out of debt. Let's go get out of debt. But like you said just a second ago, have someone else pay your debt off for you. That's good debt, right? And when you refi, there's you don't even pay taxes on that money. I mean, we're about to pull high six figures out of a couple houses, and that's tax-free money that I can then plow into more houses and create more cash flow. And, I'm not speculating, right? Somebody the other day said I was speculating. I know that there'll be a little dip, right? I know there'll be a flat part. There could be a big dip. But what I do also know is if you wait 10 years, which all of these loans are designed to be very high cash flowing properties to where I can wait 10 years. I don't know. I like your business model. And I think more people need to understand where I was going with this is you talked about pain. Everyone's scared to death about rental properties. And a lot of property managers, frankly, make the industry look bad by going around talking about tenants and toilets and the 3 a.m. phone call in the middle of the night because someone clogged a toilet. Well, first off, nobody calls when they clog a toilet in the middle of the night. They just leave it for someone else to find in the morning. Trust me, I have boys at my house. I know all about it. But I mean, I don't know, dispel some of the myths about owning rental property, if you would.
Yeah, I think the biggest myth out there, or maybe there's a couple like this, but it's that your tenants are going to destroy your home and they move in and they destroy it and they move out and you're responsible to fix it all. And look, I mean, damage can happen in properties. We manage tens of thousands of homes. I've facilitated transactions on over 50,000 properties in the rental space. Like, stuff happens, but it's certainly the exception, not the rule. It's very rare. Of all the homes and tens of thousands of homes I've managed, like, to have damage exceed the amount of security deposit is like way less than 1% of everything that goes on. It's pretty rare. But I think I think the issue with this business, as we talk about the myths, is talking about the success stories aren't really all that exciting because you didn't make $50,000 in 2 months, like when you flip a house, or you made an extra couple thousand this year in cash flow and your property appreciated a little bit and all went good. Like, that's not the fun story to tell. And again, I live in Minneapolis, and in the summer we love having bonfires and barbecues and hanging outside and drinking beer with the neighbors and stuff. And around the bonfire, you're always telling the horror stories. And it's a neighbor's friend's mom's brother-in-law's sister owned a place and like had the tenant destroy it, right? And who knows if the story's even true or how much it's changed because it's told from the 17th person down the line kind of thing. But those are the fun stories to tell around the bonfire at night and talk about all the horrors of real estate, but it's not the reality. So the fact that, I think that's the biggest myth is I'm going to get these tenants, they're going to come in and tear up my home. Frankly, there's a lot of really great quality people, be it young professionals, single people, roommate situations, or families that don't want to buy a home, that probably could even afford to buy a home, but for whatever reason, they don't want to. They just want to have a nice place to live, and they don't want to rent a house they can go in and just not respect it and trash the hell out of it. They want to have a nice place to live, and they want to pay their rent on time, and they want to live in a nice neighborhood and go amongst their thing. And that's the far, far majority of people are great tenants. And a lot of tenants who go buy their own home that just for some reason don't want to have to do that. Or, they've got student loan debt or something that they can't qualify for a mortgage for. So the fact that you're going to have a tenant move in that's never going to pay you rent, destroy the property, obviously it's a risk, but you have to mitigate that through screening your tenants before they move in and selecting great tenants and selecting quality tenants at the front of moving them in is what makes property management easy for the rest of the time. To ensure you have the right people in place with the right lease. And I think that's how you get around that. So that's probably the biggest one that I always hear about from people when I'm trying to convince them to buy real estate is, man, I just don't want to have a tenant come tear up my house. Okay, let's find a good tenant to have a move in,
Well, I was looking at my monthly report last week from my property manager and who's been managing now for 10 years at least. Yeah, because it's 10 years. And this house went vacant that we bought last year. And I was worried about it because the tenants, I saw a pit bull on my appraisal inspection and it ended up not being theirs. Anyway, I was worried about it probably for all the wrong reasons, but I called and I said, hey, why is this vacant? He goes, oh, well, they provided their 60-day notice. They moved out. He goes, it's already leased again for $100 more. And it was $1,800 the turn cost. And I was like, oh, all right. And he's like, yeah, but it's that misconception, right? And I think you were talking about young professionals. I'm of the age now where some kids that I coached really young in high school graduated. One young man just graduated. He got a job starting at like $70,000, $80,000 a year. And he had to move to a new town south of here and chose to rent, right? And another family member of mine got a job in downtown, lived with a friend for a couple months, just recently went and got her own place so she could. What you said, I wrote down, is people just want a nice place to live. And I think that's where, if you're not trying to rent a nice place, you're kind of screening that person out, right? Like
right.
And I've made that mistake in my past, right? Oh, I don't want to spend the money. I don't have the money, or I want to lease it fast. Let's put it below market rent. And I find that a lot of those wounds are self-inflicted, especially if you end up having a good property manager that can kind of guide you in the process. So can you talk a little bit about what you guys are seeing kind of macro-wise across the nation with vacancy trends, maintenance trends, any, say someone doesn't use Renters Warehouse, what advice could you give them on, is vacancy going up? Is it going down? Are you seeing maintenance percentages of the income going up, going down? Are you seeing nicer remodels get better rents? Like, a couple minutes just kind of talking about what you're seeing nationwide.
Yeah, look, I think first to follow up on your comment on my comments on the nice place to live is you don't have to over improve a rental property. You don't need to make it the Taj Mahal. It doesn't need to, they don't all need to have granite countertops and all these different things, but it's got to be nice and clean. And I tell our investors this all the time. We'll have people sometimes that'll say, hey, I'm going to get it cleaned up a little bit after I know it's rented, so I know I've got money coming. Like, well, why are you going to do that? People want to view this home as somewhere they're going to come live. Like, let's have it present as good as possible. Or they try and cut a corner on a turn, to your point, maybe not paint the wall when it should be painted. And you're going to get perception's reality, and you're going to get kind of the tenant that you're marketing to. And if you have a home that's not necessarily all the way clean, or it's not all the way painted or turned or rehabbed and ready to go for the next tenant, you're going to attract someone who doesn't mind living there, and they're going to treat it kind of how they found it, which is walls are pretty marked up anyway, so it really doesn't matter. I'm going to mark them up some more. So ensuring that you have it ready to go and it looks nice and clean. And again, it doesn't need to have all the best amenities and the high-end appliances and finishes and this, that, and the other. It's got to be a nice, clean place to live with nothing broken. And I think that's the most important thing, and getting it ready before you start showing it and getting it, put your best foot forward. The same thing as if you're trying to sell the home, right? You're not going to leave it marked up and things like that if you're trying to sell the home, because someone's going to come live there and buy it. Well, someone's going to come live there when they rent it too. So again, you don't need to remodel the thing to rent it, but you need to, it needs to be nice. And that's a big mistake I think individual investors will sometimes make to save a little bit of money. It's going to cost them in longer term vacancy. They're not going to rent it as fast. They're probably not going to rent it for as much, and they're not going to rent it to as high quality of a tenant, which is going to cause a lot of problems down the line for them. So that I think is just really important. As far as trends, across the country, I think the trends are pretty similar. We're seeing vacancy is down quite a bit, which is driving up rents. We're seeing 3 to 5, sometimes 6, 7% annual rent increases, depending on your market. So big piece of advice, if you're coming up for a renewal on a property you own, make sure you're doing your research and understanding what you really can get for a renewal for that. And it should be at least 3%, pretty much in every market. Some markets double that. And that's going to take care of the other issue you referenced, which is what's the maintenance cost as a percentage of the rent or the annual cash flow. And we're seeing costs rise, right? It's a competitive job market. Labor costs are up. Material costs are up. So maintenance costs are increasing a little bit, but not really as fast as the rent. So as long as you're staying up with your rental increases, you're making sure you're renting it to good people for the right rent, the expenses still work really, really well on the properties. And I think the biggest thing there is pegging rent price is so important, because you want to minimize vacancy, and so you don't want to overprice it where all of a sudden you're sitting vacant for 2 or 3 months because you were shooting too high. In rent increase you would have gotten for the year is now blown out the window. But you also don't want to be too low. And I've been a victim of this in the past with my own properties. I tend to be a little more generous with my own properties than I do with my clients' properties when it comes to being nice to tenants or keeping it easy on myself. And the fact of like, hey, they've been a great tenant. They've been there 3-4 years. They've never had a maintenance request. They always pay on time. I don't want to scare them out, so I'm not going to raise rent that much. Next thing you know, you're $200 or $300 below where you should be on a monthly basis. And that's a hard rent increase to make for your tenant. You kind of shoot yourself in the foot. So staying up with those rent increases every year when you can, and understanding what the market's doing is I think super important. And it really actually makes these investments work over the long term. Otherwise, you find yourself upside down with tax increases we're seeing in different markets and maintenance costs going up and all that kind of stuff.
I'm going to make a comment and then a really good comment. So I completely agree with you about the rent, the income increasing will most likely, definitely over the long haul, offset increases in taxes or insurance or labor costs, material costs. That's why I refer to it as an inflation index annuity, right? Because as costs go up, so do rents. So if you're basing your long-term income off of whatever your budget is, it's just such a good investment. But then I want to talk to you about your leadership, Kevin, because a lot of people come on these shows and a lot of people go on social media and they want to act perfect. And you just kind of threw yourself on the sword and said, look, on my own personal stuff, I make some mistakes. And I think to me, that's what makes good leaders, right? I mean, I do this podcast even not from a point of, hey, I'm perfect, you should listen to me. It's, oh man, I make a lot of mistakes and why don't you let me help you not make my mistakes? So could you just talk a little bit? I'm going to just completely shift gears. Can you talk about your leadership philosophy, the culture at Renters Warehouse, kind of where you're taking the company?
Yeah, for sure. I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm not sure if I know exactly what makes a good leader or not, but I think people want to see candidness. They want people to be candid and they want transparency and they want to see people be, I don't know if vulnerable is the right word, right? That's not the word I'm looking for, but they want to see people who can...
Authentic.
Thank you. Authenticity. That's what I was looking for. They want people to be authentic, right? And people who walk around pretending like they don't have any flaws or any issues or they've never made a mistake before, they're not authentic and you can't get a following that way. And I think, frankly, we learn more from, I'd love to not fail, right? But we learn more from our failures than we do from success. And success would taste nearly as sweet without the challenge of getting there, right? And so we embrace challenges at Renters Warehouse. And one of my favorite things to tell people when we're trying to make a decision, like, what are we going to do next, right? We've built this business from one property under management to 22,000 across the country. We do tens of millions of dollars a year in revenue. We've got hundreds of employees. It's harder to implement change in the business than it used to be, and things seem to take longer than they used to, which is always frustrating. But as we're looking at decisions, I always tell people, like, the best part about a decision is we can always change our mind, right? So let's make a decision to do it. If it turns out not to work, let's do something different and change our mind. And that's the beautiful thing about a decision is you can always make a different one ultimately, right? And so that's just kind of how I am. And I like to learn from our mistakes. But as far as leadership, the culture we have here is we work really hard to hire great people that are good at what they do, no matter what level they are in the organization, whether that's my executive team. I've got a great operations guy. Our chief operations officer came from 17 years at Target Corporation running national stores. He knows how to implement operational processes, procedures, and standardization across the country in thousands of stores. He can probably do a great job doing it for us at our 25 corporate locations. We have some franchises left as well in our organization, which they're doing fantastic stuff too. But he's got it. He's done this before. I'm going to let him, he's way smarter than me when it comes to operations. That's why I hired him. Do your thing. You can't micromanage someone who's smarter than you and get good results. So I try and do what I can to be the dumbest person in the room and surround myself with great people. And that makes success really easy at that point, right? Because you've got really smart people. And the same thing in all the way down the organization. Our property managers, we hire people who dig being on the phone all day long and solving problems and working with people and having empathy and compassion and those types of things that you need as a property manager. And even as a rent collector, your job is to collect rent. That's a tough job. We have a rent collection department that's all they do all day long is collect rent, but they like it. And they like having conversations with people. They like to feel the success when they're getting it all coming in, but they can also empathize with people and create the right payment plans and understand situations. And so point is you understand what the qualities are, not just the skills needed to hire a certain position, but what kind of emotional EQ is needed, emotional intelligence for that position, and hire based on culture fit, hire based on EQ. We can teach the skills. And I think in the world we live in today with changing with more and more instant satisfaction, instant gratification that people are looking for, and instant response times and less personal world, being able to have people who can have empathetic conversations and understand from the heart what our property owners are going through and they're having to pay for repairs and what our tenants are going through when they're maybe short on rent or having an air conditioner that's not working at 95 degrees outside and trying to make things come together is really important. So that's what we look for when we're hiring people. And we have a culture here where our number one core value is serve, and that's serving our tenants, serving our property owners, serving our fellow employees and teammates, and just work together as a team. This business, as you mentioned, is a pain. It's just dealing with problems all day long. And so if you don't have the right attitude and the philosophy and you're not trying to make it fun along the way, it can be a real bear. And so that's what we try and do here.
So a point of clarification for anyone listening, when Kevin says dealing with problems all day long, what he means is the happy tenants aren't the ones that call you. They don't call you to say, hey, thank you so much. The oven's working great, right? The people that pay their rent on time and are having a good time in the house and with their neighbors down the street are not calling the property manager. So he's not saying that houses are a problem. He's saying the only tenants really you have to talk to in this business are the ones that, have an issue with it. And it's not even just a problem tenant. Natural disasters, storms, floods. Things happen to houses, air conditioners in Texas. I just want to make that point. I want to ask you, you said be the dumbest person in the room. I super love that, right? My property manager, actually, the reason I picked him in 2009 is he owns personally over 2,000 single family and multifamily units. Seems like a lot smarter than me. So I want him in charge of managing my properties, right? Because I don't have 2,000 yet. I'm still young, I guess.
Right.
Then
you're almost there. You'll get there.
I wanted you to talk about a couple years ago when I ran that Blackstone company, we had this new marketing guy that came in and he was just convinced that the next wave of landlords in the country would be people that rented their own house but bought rental properties instead of investing in their 401k. So I want to know if you see any of that. And then I want to talk about kind of the type of owner that Renters Warehouse really enjoys working with. And then I wanted to take some time to talk about your podcast.
Okay. So the first one, we haven't seen a huge influx of people saying, hey, I'm going to rent my primary residence and then buy rental properties. Now, that said, we're seeing it more and more, but I wouldn't call it a wave yet, right? But it's interesting because we actually have some tenants who rent homes from us, from our landlords, and they are a client as well because they own a home somewhere else that they rent out through Renters Warehouse. And so we literally have a tenant who's also an owner with us. And I thought that was really interesting when I saw that first maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And it was a younger guy, I want to say like early 20s kind of thing. I think he ended up just relocating for work. And he said, I want to hang on to it. I want to start to create rental properties anyway, but I don't know how long I'm going to be here in the city. So I figured I'd just rent and it's easier for me to hang on to my other if I'm renting today and build a portfolio. And I've talked to some other folks who are doing that too, who are tenants with us because they're asking about our services. And it was a little bit more intentional. I'm not really interested in owning a place where I can maintain it and just to live there and do this stuff, but I see the power of this investment and I want to get into it. So I'm not against home ownership. I just don't really want to own the home I live in. I want to have flexibility and not have to worry about replacing the roof and things. If I have to replace it in my investment, that's one thing. It's an investment. My primary house, I just want to have it be simple. So we're seeing that a little bit. I think that's really cool. It's really interesting. My advice to young folks who are kind of looking at that perspective is buy a duplex, triplex, fourplex, live in one unit, rent out the other one, similar to what I did when I started. Because what's interesting is, again, you can buy up to a 4-unit property on an FHA loan. So if you're someone that's just out of college and you find the right fourplex or duplex, you can put as little as 3% down on it because it's an owner occupied as long as you live in one unit. And you bought your first rental property with 3% down, and those other units are going to cover your mortgage for you. So you're going to be living rent free, save that payment you would be making to buy your next property. I mean, a fantastic way to get started in real estate investing is at a young age, buy that multi-unit property, put it on an FHA loan, live there for 2, 3, 4 years, and then move on to the next one. And I think there's just huge opportunity in doing that. But, be a tenant from yourself, right? Rather than from somebody else. So that's an interesting trend. I forgot what your second question was now, though.
Well, just like what type of owner do you, so like I hate working with know-it-alls. Who's your ideal client? What's your avatar? What's the Renters Warehouse avatar?
Yeah. Our ideal client is someone who wants to create long-term wealth and financial freedom through real estate. And what I mean by that, because that's a very broad topic, is someone who wants to not just buy one home and have us manage it forever. We love them too, but we're building our business for the person who wants to buy their first home and then in a couple of years buy their second home and then their third, their fourth, and fifth to grow a true real estate portfolio that's going to provide them an amazing retirement, financial security for the family, build a legacy, whatever it might be, whatever the reasons are for that. So that person who really sees this as a long-term investment, wants to grow it, wants to learn about it, do it in an educated way. There's a lot of investment companies out there, property management companies, real estate firms that are happy to have you just stay dumb, right? Which means here's a great investment. I don't need to really teach you a lot about the market or the place or what it is or why. Just trust me, buy this one. We'll take care of the rest. And that's okay, I think. But I think if you're going to invest in this and build a portfolio long term, you don't even know everything about it, but you should understand the fundamentals, how it works, how you can make it work better for you, how to grow your portfolio, what markets to invest in, that kind of stuff. And that's what I mean by education at Renters Warehouse. We're doing webinars, podcasts, all these things to really push this information out to our current clients and prospective clients to say, hey, here's the basics. Here's the fundamentals. Learn this stuff. You're going to love it. It's going to make you passionate about it and want to grow a portfolio. So that's the ideal client. I think that tailors with, too, someone who's looking at it from a more of a business perspective rather than something that they're just dealing with on the side. And they're going to let us do our thing, meaning manage the properties the way we built our business to manage properties, not try and get us to get outside of our processes. We've made that mistake. We bring on an investor who says, hey, I'm going to give you a lot of houses, but you need to do it my way. Oh, okay, great. And then we screw it up because it's not inside the processes in our business to be built and how we've found success managing property. So that person who wants to grow that portfolio, hold it long-term, build financial freedom, and just kind of not necessarily be hands-off, be involved, learn about it, but also trust that we've been doing this a long time. We're going to take good care of their property. Those are the clients we love to work with and we're building our business for.
So you just mentioned the young person that you spoke to that was relocating, decided to hang on to the house instead of sell it and then move somewhere else and rent it. That's kind of in line with the rent estate commercials I've heard on the radio. And according to the blog at Renters Warehouse, you have a new podcast, the Rent Estate podcast coming out. Tell us about it.
So Rent Estate is our take on real estate, right? We wanted to differentiate ourselves from kind of what you and I opened up talking about, which is home flippers, wholesalers, rehabbers. Far too often when people hear about or think about or talk about real estate investing, they're going to go buy a wholesale deal for 40 cents on the dollar, put some sweat equity into it, rehab it, and sell it for a bunch of money. Or it's the flipping shows on HGTV or whatever it might be. And that was real estate investing. We talked about why both of us really don't do a lot of that anymore. And we believe in this long-term investment strategy. And we wanted a phrase for it. And so we thought of rent estate, right? Rental houses, buying properties to rent, and they play on real estate. So we trademarked the term rent estate. It's what we do. It's long-term wealth creation through real estate. We wrote the book on it, Rent Estate Revolution. And that's basically the how-to guide of what we just talked about, educating people on how to get started in this, why you should get started, and all of the benefits and all the levers you can pull from leveraging other people's money and tax benefits and appreciation and creating this annuity with an underlying asset value. All that stuff is in the book. That's what we've been talking about for years. And that's what we're passionate about, right? Long-term real estate investing and creating wealth through it. That's Rent Estate. So we just started the Rent Estate podcast a couple weeks ago. We just dropped episode 2. And the point of the show is to talk to successful real estate investors, whether that successful investor has 2 homes or they have 100 homes or 1,000 homes, to gain their perspective, their tips and tricks on how to invest in real estate, what's worked for them, what areas work for them. But what I'm even more excited about is having guests on the show from inside Renters Warehouse, where we can give tips and tricks to people who are doing it themselves or just getting started in rental real estate, stuff from the front lines, from the trenches. And I built a podcast studio here in the office so that I can go in and grab one of my head rent collectors when I got time on a Tuesday. Hey, let's go cut a podcast on rent collection. Talk about the best rent collection principles and how do we do that, or tenant screening processes. Grab one of my maintenance coordinators and talk about vendors and maintenance pricing and all those different kind of things. That we just want to deliver great quality education for people who are doing this stuff, from people who are doing this stuff every day, for people who are looking to get into it or just start growing their business.
And so I'm guessing they can find anyone listening that likes podcasts, which if they're listening to this, they most likely like podcasts. What are we thinking? Is it iTunes, Google Play? Where all can we find it?
You can find it wherever you find your favorite podcast. I believe we've got it covered. We're in the top 6 spots. So iTunes, Google Play, YouTube. We've got the video podcast up there. Just go to renterswarehouse.com, search for the podcast. You can find it there as well. But we hope we're going to deliver some awesome tips and tricks from, again, people who are investing in real estate and have made a success out of it, or people who are working this business every day in the trenches and provide some good education there as well.
And Rent Estate is 2 words, correct?
It is 2 words.
Well, that's great, Kevin. I'm going to listen to the first episode of that today, and I look forward to hearing your episodes in the future. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I have to talk to you about barbecue and bonfires. Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/TH and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a free title and start listening. It's that easy. Go to audibletrial.com/TH today. Get started with your free trial and claim your 1 free audiobook. Now, Kevin, we have to talk about barbecue, because for me, barbecue is it has become a metaphor. It's kind of taking time to do the things that you really enjoy. I hear, even in a Facebook group that we run, the Business and BBQ Facebook group, somebody said this week, someone that is a very experienced investor said, I've got a brisket in my freezer. I'm just trying to find the time to thaw it out and cook it. And I thought, well, that's the whole point of what we do, right? What's the use of an entrepreneur if you really are trying to find the time? It's like, make the time, right? Don't find time. So barbecue is just a passion for me. I love to eat State BBQ. I drove when Anthony Kazazian that works for you was in Austin one time about a year and a half ago. I drove him like an hour away from the conference to take him to Salt Lake BBQ. But it's a cultural thing. It soothes my soul. I enjoy it. And I used not to take time for it. So now I do, and it's become something I'm like obsessed with. So 2 questions, and then we're going to wrap up with your contact information and stuff. Question 1 is, do you like barbecue? And if so, tell me about it. And then, but question 2, if not barbecue, like what is the barbecue in your life, right? What is the passion that Kevin has? And you can't say anything cheesy like, oh, we're helping my employees, right? It's got to be like, you like it.
So I do like barbecue. I live in Minneapolis, and frankly, there's not a lot of great barbecue. No. There'll be some folks in Minneapolis like, oh man, that new barbecue place is open. It's awesome. I've been fortunate in my life, and I've done a lot of travel, and I've been to the South. I've been to Texas and Memphis and places where barbecue is legit, and have had good barbecue. And I'm like, it's okay. I'll go there, but it's nothing like that. And so we don't do tons of barbecue here in Minneapolis. But when I travel, when I'm in Texas, when I'm down in the South, Memphis and other places that are known for it, I love to go out and get it. I love the brisket. I love pork, and the sides though are amazing at the barbecue joints, right? All the sides you can get. I'm a big mac and cheese fan. So I love barbecue. Just don't get enough of it here in Minneapolis. You probably understand.
Oh, yeah.
Second, for me, my kind of getting away from it all, my barbecue metaphor, it's 2 things. One, in the summer here, again, when it's not frozen, I just love getting out on the lake with my family. So we've got a water ski boat. I'm a big water skier. I don't do it as much as I used to, but I take the kids, we pull the kids, and watching the kids learn how to do that stuff is just a lot of fun. And being out on the lake, enjoying our summer here, because it's really important that we get out and enjoy the summer in Minnesota because it doesn't last very long. So that's it for me. And then, in the winter, it's traveling. I love taking the family and exploring new places and having the kids experience new stuff and me experience new things and barbecue and all that kind of stuff.
That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today. If you could delve out some phone numbers, websites, how do people contact Renters Warehouse, and what all is available? Like you said, you got an investor marketplace, you get free resources. Tell us everything that you do and how you can help us.
Yeah, for sure. So renterswarehouse.com would be the main place to go check out. And on there, we've got our research center where you can research market trends and data in any market across the country. So if you're interested in saying, hey, I want to buy in Dallas, and I wonder how things are going there, how projections are looking. We've got 20-year price history charts there, so you can make some assumptions on what price appreciation is going to do over time, employment information, migration patterns, all sorts of stuff to really dive in. And the fun thing about the research center is you can start playing around and understand how different markets yield differently based on kind of what housing price appreciation might be doing, right? Place that have high housing price appreciation might have a little bit of a lower yield. It's a give and take. Somewhere has a less housing price appreciation, you might make more cash flow. So going around and playing on the investment marketplace, our research center, I think is really a powerful tool for people just getting into real estate investing or who want to learn more about real estate investing. Or if you just want to research the next market you want to buy in because you're not going to buy in your backyard, check that out. You can check out the tenanted homes, the houses for sale with tenants already placed on the marketplace. Soon we'll be actually integrating MLS into that. So you'll be able to view not only homes with tenants in place, but you'll be able to search all properties on the MLS by yield, cash flow, ROI, whatever your financial metrics are you want to be looking for. That's coming out soon. That'll be exciting. So check that out. Obviously, you can get a list of our property management services there, leasing, property management, all the markets we're in. So renterswarehouse.com is the good home for that. If you want to contact me, find me. LinkedIn is the best way. It's the social media I use the most. A little bit of Facebook, but find me on LinkedIn, Kevin Ortner. And finally, you can check out our book at rentestaterevolution.com or on Amazon.
Well, that's a lot. And so if you're listening and you're thinking about relocating and instead of selling your house, it's just one of those things. I think just too many people, you got a bunch of equity from the last couple of years, keep it, contact Renters Warehouse, and even research where you're moving and see if you can find another property you can live in and then turn into a rental, or at least educate yourself about the rental market where you're moving. So Kevin, thank you very much. We are done. We're out of time. When you're in Dallas next time, please call me and I will take you to eat some real barbecue.
Fantastic. I can't wait. Thanks for having me on, Tim. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Until next time, everybody, keep cooking.
Thanks for listening to the Business and BBQ podcast. Make sure you check out our other episodes and stop by timharridge.com to say hi. We want to hear from you. Until next time, keep cooking.
Oh, hey, are you still there? If you're still there, that means you like this episode and you listen to the entire thing. It would mean the world to me if you would take a minute out of your time, subscribe to our podcast, and give us a review. I just finished a third full month of doing this, and I'm excited about where the show's going. So do me a favor, share the episode, share the podcast, subscribe, and leave us a review. If there's ever anything I can do to help you, please let me know. Until next time, like I say, keep cooking.